Yate, she is Harper Nisha. Adona Nishnagi a Kiani Nishla, Tachini Bashashin, Totsuni Dashache, Do Kiani Dashanale. Akutego Tsatke Nishla, Chinale de Nasha. Hello everyone, my name is Sky Harper. I am Kiani of the Towering House clan, born for the Red Running Water clan. My maternal grandfather is of the Big Water clan, and my paternal grandfather is of the Towering House clan. I am the eldest of 6 and I'm a first generation student, and I acknowledge my place on earth as a Dine youth. I stand here today as a testament that the United States' mission to eradicate and assimilate Native Americans has failed. Over 2,000 miles away from home, about 100 miles away from the Carlisle Indian Boarding School, the first Native American boarding school, and a few blocks from the birthplace of America, where we're referred to as savages, I stand here in defiance. First impressions are very misleading and can never reveal one's true self. Most people are often shocked and surprised when I tell them my home has no electricity, no running water, or we have to drive over 3 hours to get to the nearest grocery store. Most people would not assume that just from having a first conversation with me. However, what I found is that throughout my experiences and reflecting on life, along with these first impressions, just in general, people often find my story pretty peculiar and my upbringing. Both my friends on the reservation and off the reservation, and friends now in college, all kind of share that same commonality when they first meet me. My dad is a welder, and he travels for work every few months. So my parents thought this was the perfect opportunity for me to gain exposure to the real world, life off the reservation. We traveled pretty much all along the West Coast, from California, Arizona, all the way up to Washington, from city to city, from school to school, all throughout my elementary years. And throughout that experience, I gained quite the familiarity, or I guess my eyes were open to the diversity of human life and all the different lifestyles that people had. And one thing that I realized was that no matter where my family went, people would always look at us with these confused expressions. People would often kind of have these sideward glances as if trying to dissect my family, to figure out what we were, what we identified as, and what our ethnicity was. This was further mimicked when I went to elementary school, and most of my peers would often conclude that I was some type of Asian ethnicity. And I often let this kind of roll off my shoulders, mostly because I knew that Native Americans were limited to maybe 2 days, maybe less than a week in history class. And to everybody else, we were pretty much gone. So like I said, this was kind of just how I grew up, and I grew numb to it. But every now and then there were some difficulties that I encountered, and sometimes I would be upset, wondering why don't people accept me? Why am I just this outsider? So my parents would often kind of gather all of my little brothers and I and just start talking to us. They'd say, "Do hanit jazada, do ajdiklis." They'd say, "Be prepared for challenges in life. Don't be easily hurt." This, along with many other teachings, Hojonj Eko, Do Nayek Eko, the Blessing Way and Protection Way teachings, were what we were taught when we were young. And from there, those were the foundations that pretty much prepared us for life. So that was kind of the first, I guess, chapter of my life, just coming to terms with, I'm not going to be accepted anywhere off the reservation. Everybody will kind of look at me as an oddity, as an outlier. But when it came for me to enter high school, my family decided to move back to the reservation. They thought that we've been out of touch for so long, it's time to come back to our culture. Sure, while we were off, we did our best to practice our traditions, our teachings, speak our language, but we could never do that at the capacity that we would be able to back at the reservation. Along with this, my mom wanted to establish a permanent home for me and my brothers so that we always knew where home was and we were more familiar with our family all around. So we moved back, and I was enrolled in a boarding school about 3 hours away from home. I would be there during the week, and then on the weekends I would go back home. For most people, this would be kind of a challenge. It would be a lot of effort to go to boarding school, to stay in a dormitory away from home. But it was the most, I guess, academically challenging school in the area. And my parents thought we need to have the best education system because I'm a first generation student and they don't really know what else to do. And they thought education was the key. So my school was unique in that it was a 95% Native American population. And when I say 95% Native American population, you need to understand that it's also very diverse within that. We had Navajos, Apaches, Hopis, Zunis, and just a medley of all these other different tribes. And what I thought I was going to be welcome to when I went to school was I thought I would find myself. I would be here with all my peers and we would all share the same heritage, the same language, and be accepted as a community. And I thought I would be welcomed with open arms. But in a plot twist, I was not welcomed with open arms. Everybody kind of thought that I wasn't Navajo enough. Everybody thought that maybe I was white. And I don't know why this happened, but I kind of just attribute it to maybe my demeanor, my way of thinking. Maybe I was influenced too heavily by the Western education system, and that's what they saw. So it was ironic. At first, it didn't bother me, but the more I thought about it, the more I kind of broke down. I was thinking, why am I being ridiculed by my own people? Why am I here not feeling accepted? I expected this off the reservation with all these other cultures, all these different people, but coming back home, I shouldn't feel like this. And at the time, I didn't know what it was called, what that feeling was. And then I learned later that it was called imposter syndrome. So I dealt with that when I was at a younger age. But kind of what pulled me through was on the weekends, we would go home, we would practice our ceremonies, go visit relatives, we would go do some community events in the community. And from there, I began to realize, and my eyes kind of opened up, I thought, I'm the one practicing my traditions. I'm the one speaking my culture, speaking my language and practicing my culture. Who cares what these people think? Who cares what any of these people think? As long as I'm here and practicing, as long as I believe, I'm the one who defines my path. I'm the one who gives value to myself. So the teasing kind of continued throughout high school. It became more infrequent, mostly because I never entertained it, and most people just kind of grew to accept me because I was there. So my senior year of high school, it was interesting because the faculty would always tell my class, they keep saying, when you guys graduate from here, when you go off to higher education, you're going to experience something called a culture shock. You're going to be the only native in the room at some point of your life, and you won't feel accepted, or sometimes you'll feel like an outsider. And it was ironic, really, because I was there feeling that already. But fast forward to now, going into higher education, I can't say I didn't have a culture shock, but what I had was a weird, I guess, version of a shock. I realized that in higher education and in the professional setting, there's been more acceptance of Indigenous culture, Indigenous perspective, as well as Indigenous way of thought. Nobody is going to measure how much native you are, how much of a native you are, how much experience you've had on the reservation. They accept you for who you are, and people are open to it. So here at Drexel, I've tried my best to make milestones for Native Americans and Indigenous people. I've established the first organization to focus directly on Indigenous students, Drexel Indigenous Students of the Americas, and we've done our best to host events and bring together community for the Indigenous people on campus. Along with that, last year I was asked to be the 2022 National Native American Heritage Month speaker for the United States Department of Agriculture. So I got to speak in front of all of these people and offer my perspective and my experience. I find it really ironic that I had to travel over 2,000 miles away from home to just feel accepted and to just feel valuable. I stand here and hope that whoever's listening, whoever may feel like an outsider to their community, whoever may not fully feel accepted, that you hear my story and you know that you're a resilient person. You make your own identity and you define who you are. Each person offers a unique perspective, and each person has valuable insight and value. Pretty much you're valuable. So don't let anybody else define you, or don't let anybody else bring you down. Thank you for your time and attention. Go ahead.